Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Today, we are debating a very controversial issue within the war of rights community about whether or not artillery is worth the manpower. This debate will happen over the course of 4 different rounds, and each panelist will have 3 minutes to state their point, having a total of 12 minutes in the overall grand scheme of the debate. At the end, there will be questions from the audience that the panelist will answer. There are 3 people on the side that says yes, artillery is worth the manpower. And we have 2 people on the side that say that no, artillery is not worth the manpower. With that being said, let us introduce the people that said yes, artillery is worth the manpower. First, we have Archer.
Second Corps, 6LA Charlie Company, represent.
Thank you. And then we have Little Dragon.
Hello, Little Dragon here. You might know me from Twitch. I do the things for GC, show you what GC is about from the air.
Thank you. And then last but not least, we have Vec.
Hey, how's it going? I'm Vec. I'm with the IVB, and glad to be here. Thanks, Eagle.
Thank you guys for coming. Now we're moving on to the people that said no, artillery is not worth the manpower. And first we have Corded.
I'm Gordon. I'm captain of Delta Company in 6th Louisiana, part of 2nd Corps.
And then we have Vastal.
Hello, I'm Vassal. I'm a member of the Irish Volunteer Brigade's 88th New York. Hope to have a good debate.
With that underway, we're going to start with our rotation for the first round, the opening round. So, 3 minutes. Archer, you may begin.
All right. So my premise is really simple. It's that artillery is a two-edged sword. And basically what I mean by that is starting from the top, you have to have 3 things to have good artillery, right? You have to have a good position. It has to be effective, meaning it's on target. And it has to be on time, meaning it has to be shot at the right time. Basically, that just means, as far as I'm concerned, artillery has a general purpose, right? The general purpose is gradual damage and area control, right? These 2 things can work hand in hand, although they can kind of be individual in their own way. But in the first instance, you have gradual damage, so artillery allows you to take tickets without risking basically any at all, assuming no counter battery. And as well, it also allows you to control the area of battle. So, in a practical example, an attacker may take a less advantageous position to draw out an enemy into the range of artillery. From the Union perspective, this would be the eastern flank on Hooker's push, pushing into a very large open field, very limited cover, but it can draw the Confederates into a very vulnerable position to Union artillery, which can be very effective on that map. And then from the defender's point of view, you have maps like Nicodemus Hill for Confederates, where if you allow the Union to have the right flank, which is completely immune to artillery, you're nullifying basically something that could be very effective for the defenders in that case. Now, mind you, this whole thing, right, is not to say that Confederates with artillery versus Union without artillery is an instant win, or vice versa. Rather, it's up to the point, right? Is artillery worth the manpower? Which basically just boils down to, as far as I'm concerned, will artillery help you win? And I think the answer to that question is definitely yes. A team with a well-placed battery, with a well-manned crew, not too many, mind you, but with a well-manned guns, will have a better chance of succeeding than a team that spends those tickets on infantry.
Thank you. Now, moving on to the first person who says that artillery is not worth the manpower. Corded, you have 3 minutes.
All right, I want to go ahead and get this out of the way. I like artillery, but I've put more of my focus onto the manpower side of the argument. As we probably know, artillery has a much steeper learning curve than infantry does. You can drill for about an hour for infantry, and they'll be fine. Artillery, it's going to take a lot more practice, and it's more, I guess, specific to each map and each position and each side, Union or CSA. Now, what I've heard from experience and going to different kinds of events, historical rules, and all that, there tends to be the idea that you need to have 3 or more people on a cannon for it to be the most effective. I would disagree with that and say that one person can can man a gun by themselves just fine. And having those extra cannons are going to do much better than having 3-on-1, because say you have a rammer, sponger for one person, loader for the other, and then one more for aiming. Those first two people aren't really contributing much other than to the rate of fire, which, in my opinion, doesn't play into the events that much. There's not too many times where you're going to need to shoot a bunch of rounds at one time. And remember, you're limited to ammo. So you can't just keep shooting over and over again, because your infantry is going to need it for later, especially towards the end of the match.
All right.
And that's all I'll say for now.
All right, cool. Thank you. Now, moving on to a yes, the artillery is worth the manpower. We have Little Dragon. You have 3 minutes.
Yeah, I've played as infantry only. I didn't play as artillery at all. And first, I thought artillery was just there to, spice up the game a little bit. But when I started live streaming and filming everything from above for first the Altera campaign and now the Grand campaign, I have seen RT blow up half or more of a regiment with one shot. And the suppressive fire they can give to deny access to an area, like bombarding an area completely, can be of such a demoralizing it's such a demoralizing aspect that you as an attacker or defender cannot be at that specific stone wall that you always want to be, because it offers you the most protection. But RT is bombing the shit out of your favorite spot. Yeah, that's just demoralizing to begin with. Not on every map. So I think I've written down a list. I think the most effective maps for RT are High Street, Nicodemus Hill, Harper's Graveyard, Colquitt's Defense, and Cox Push. So definitely on those maps, you want artillery and you want them to fire fast.
All right. Thank you for that. Now moving on to a person who said no, that artillery is not worth the manpower. We have Vastal.
Hello. I think my main point would be, by and large, artillery batteries per person do less ticket damage than people in line formations. The majority of artillery shots that actually manage to connect kill maybe 1 to 3 people, oftentimes in formation people, due to the fact that artillery will wish to fire at concentrated targets. With the ideal 3 men per battery for rate of fire, it takes on average 30 to 50 seconds to send another shot down range. Whilst I cannot speak for the accuracy of every artillerist, in my time spent playing this game, out of every 10 shots fired at my own or other units, 3 or 4 connect. If we take a 3-man arty team and calculated the damage they end up doing using averages, we'd see a 40-second rate of fire, which during the most ideal of circumstances, let's say they have targets in front of 70% of the game. In a full match, without any issues continuously sending fire down range, they could fire their entire complement of shells, 20 shots on a 3-inch or a 10-pounder, in 17 minutes. So, in those 17 minutes, to average out ticket damage, let's use 2 killed on each shot that hit, 1 skirmishing and 1 in formation, to an average of 4 tickets. With 40% hitting, that's 32 tickets of damage with that 1 battery. Rounded up, that's 11 tickets per man on that artillery piece. Less than 17 minutes than someone killing... It takes less damage in 17 minutes than someone killing 4 skirmishers in 2 charges. Let's say then that all the artillery shots hit, and all of them manage to kill 2 people. That's 80 tickets. Then let's say all of your shots hit, and you get 3 big ones that kill 5 people each, and an out of line in there too. 107 tickets. Now divide that great damage by 3. For those 3 guys on it, that's 36 tickets per man rounded up. Very good damage result. But in those same 17 minutes, someone in a line infantry can easily match that ratio through good shots and good melee at work. In almost all circumstances, the men on artillery are doing less damage per man compared to infantry. My second main point is that every man on artillery is a man that cannot fight for the point of contention on skirmish and cannot maneuver in conquest. 3 or 4 men make the difference, even in big fights of 50+ men. And then, of course, there's the other point that artillery is simply bad on certain maps, and will have an even worse performance than average. Some that come to mind are Bolivar Heights Camp, Cooks, Downtown, Reno's Fall, and others. I must end my opening statement, of course, with this. Artillery play should not be discouraged in public play. That is something that is anathema to what we as a community should try to foster. I am of the position that on the basis of manpower, artillery is a net negative. I am not of the position that people mustn't play it, but rather should be aware of the worst issues regarding artillery play, such as too many on batteries, ineffective use of artillery, and friendly fire. That's my opening statement.
All right, thank you. And then the last person for this first round who said yes, artillery is worth the manpower, we have Vec. You have 3 minutes for your opening statement.
Yeah, I'd like to thank my pro artillery colleagues, Archer and Little Dragon. They brought up excellent points. I myself, in full transparency, I don't play arty much, but as a frontline soldier, I have experienced its effectiveness. And I think a lot of people would agree with me when I say that artillery it has the ability to dictate the battle. Obviously, on certain maps, of course, it's not even available on certain maps. It's not even effectual. But it's my belief that the arty dictates where the enemy can and can't go, and likewise, it also dictates where your allies can and can't go. If you have a good arty crew, that's able to really, dial in on certain positions, you can keep the enemy from places that they want to be. Especially, we're seeing that develop in the new conquest mode. Different ways to utilize the artillery effectively. You also have to consider the morale. When you have a good artillery crew and you are in a line-to-line combat and you see the artillery just absolutely hammering the opposing side, and you just see red mist flying everywhere, it's a really good morale boost to see that on your side. Not so much when it's happening to you, of course, but then again, that's another token towards the effectiveness of arty. I think we've all been there. I don't want to speak for everybody, but I mean, most people have seen just how devastating artillery in the right hands on the right maps can be. And yeah, that's my opening statement.
All right, thank you. Now we're moving on to the second round of debate. Same order as we did before. So with that being said, Archer, you'll get 3 minutes. You may begin.
All right, cool. So I want to address some points from my opponents in the more anti-artillery. I actually would say that, and I think we'll all probably get to this point where we generally agree that there can be too much artillery. That is certainly a thing. So to Corded's point, a small effective battery will always trump a bloated, just flinging shots out willy-nilly, not even aimed properly, even if they are aimed properly, honestly. I think those can be better placed as infantry, and those can definitely be better used as infantry. So I definitely agree with you on that. And I think we have a somewhat understanding that that's how we tend to run things in 6LA, where it's a small battery, 7th bat, and our boys in the actual artillery. But I 100% agree there. And for Vastal, I don't have the calculations in front of me, but I remember roughly what you said, and it sounds like fairly legitimate as far as the number of tickets taken. I would push back at least a little bit for the sense that you are always risking your infantry. You're almost never risking your artillery, right? Aside from counter battery, like I mentioned before, but when your infantry's out there, there's always the risk that you're dying, that you're losing tickets, and even if you are taking tickets, you can also be losing some as well. So in the end, it just comes down to, all right, well, is your infantry play like good enough to account for not having as many on battery? And that's that. And as far as you also mentioned some maps where artillery is just plain useless, I 100% agree. On Cook's countercharge, Union artillery is useless. There is no point to having it. You maybe get off one shot of canister, It just right into the Confederates' faces before your entire artillery position is overrun, and you will never take it back until never. Yeah, it just won't happen, and there's really no reason to, because it can't be effective where it's at. But I think that actually pulls back to my original point, where you have to have three, right? You have to have, I call it the triad, right? It has to be positioned effectively. Artillery does. It has to be effective, accurate, and it has to have the right timing. And if you don't have any one of those, especially the first, if you don't have positioning, then it's really not going to do anything. So I do think you made a good point there.
Thank you. Well, now moving on to Corded. You have 3 minutes. You may begin.
So back to what Vass was saying, I think. You're talking about like people want to play artillery if they want, especially in the pubs. Even in regimental matches, if you want to play artillery for fun, that's fine. But when we're talking about what's effective and what's going to win, that's a totally separate issue, and that's been brought up in many debriefs that I've had to be a part of. One of the things that Vassal was talking about was ticket per man ratio, and back to what I was saying, with having one or two, just having as few people on artillery as possible per cannon would offset that. So one person's getting more tickets per kill or per round. Archer, one of the things you were saying before, that 1, 2, 3 things have to come together for artillery to be effective, and that's a hard thing to do. Timing, probably one of the biggest things. You have to either wait for them to cross the field and you have to catch them, which is a really difficult thing to do. And if they're behind cover, are you going to shoot in front of the cover? You're going to try and shoot over it, then mess with the fuse and all that. That's a whole different thing that you don't have to worry about with infantry. So even trying to put people on artillery just to train them, it takes a long time, and it goes back to having so many people on it. What Dragon was saying about spectating events, yeah, artillery can be very effective, but I think when we see an entire line get hit like once in a round or in an event, it skews how we can see it, because we don't really think about all the shots that missed or only killed 1 or 2 people that were in formation. When I was spectating with Eagle, we saw that a lot. I'm on Roulette Lane. The guns weren't firing that much, even when they had full crews. I saw at one point a whole line got destroyed. Like 10 people at once. It was great. But that was one time, and Union still lost that map. And the thing about Red Mist that a lot of people get wrong, when there's an explosion with shell and case, there's no red mist. Red mist comes from, at least for the most part, it comes from direct contact on an enemy player. So you'll see that initial red mist, and if it can just go through them, like through their chest level, it's gonna blow right behind them, and you're not gonna kill anyone except that one, maybe 2 person that was standing behind them. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Now we're moving on to Little Dragon. 3 minutes may begin.
Yeah, so I have played in the Altera campaign the map Cox Push with the exact same team twice. The first time the defenders had artillery and Union stood no chance. And the second time we played it, they weren't allowed to use any artillery due to a card, and Union stood way more chance. In fact, Union won, and I think that was because the CSA wasn't allowed to use any artillery in that specific map. Now, of course, I've heard that overflowing your artillery, like manning a single gun with 5 guys, yeah, that's a waste of manpower indeed. But I think if you put 2 to 3 guys on a gun, I think then you have a pretty balanced output of fire. One can aim, one can do the loading, and one can sponge it and everything. And maybe in the beginning you need to place your gun in the right position. As Archer said, you your artillery to be in the right position to be effective. And for your long range shots, take as an example Schoolhouse Ridge. Muskets are not effective long range at all. I have seen so many volleys which do not kill a single person at all during any given time. And artillery can still give you those extra kills when there is a distance, a very long distance between you and the enemy. So I think, yeah, for that matter as well, artillery should be played in events and, well, pop matches always, of course.
Thank you. Next on the list, Vastal. 3 minutes, you may begin.
All right. First thing, of course, is I do agree, of course, that artillery does have its uses. On certain maps, it can be a net benefit. I wouldn't say it's a outright game winner in any map, but I would say that it can have benefits, like such as Cox's Push, which was mentioned. Cox's Push gives a very target-rich environment for artillery players, especially since, and this is one of my main points, is that you are defending. Attackers, by and large, should not use artillery. You need the men on the point of contention. You need the men for the charges. You need the men for everything. And having guys that are sitting back and not contributing to the eventual capture of the point of contention is not good. You need bodies on that point to capture it. And if the defenders have equal numbers to you, that's a bad thing. And then, in the inverse, if you're a defender, well, the attacker has equal numbers on the point, so you have two options. You either take the less casualty option, as someone mentioned, where artillery, most of the time, will not take incoming fire, because, both artillery batteries are going to be too focused on shooting each other's line formations and getting kills. However, with defender artillery, those men that are on the battery, you also are going to want on the objective, because you want to have more defenders on the point than the attackers. So, can the artillery crewmen kill enough to equalize or make it so that the defenders have a greater number, or would it be better for those men to be on the point? And in most cases, let's say there's a fight over the point that lasts 1 minute. That artillery battery, let's say 6 men, is going to be able to fire their 2 shots, and you know how it is. They might miss, they might not. You can't miss a stab in melee. It's a blob against a blob. Those 6 men could be in a melee fighting it out. Stabbing. You can't miss. It's very hard to screw it up. You really need people on points. You really need people maneuvering and fighting on the ground. People that are too far away from points can't influence enough how the points are held and taken. Especially in Conquest. I heard someone mention that artillery can be valuable in Conquest. I wholeheartedly disagree. I find that Conquest is the worst game mode for artillery, because on most of the Conquest maps, you need to maneuver. There are 3 points that are very widely spread apart, and artillery, on a lot of them, simply doesn't have the zone of control. On top of that, is usually on one objective. You need to be able to maneuver units constantly in Conquest, and 6 guys that were on a battery would be much more valuable moving around, tearing down flagpoles.
All right.
That would be my statement.
Thank you, Vastal. Now, for the last person of the second round, Vec, you have 3 minutes. You may begin.
Yeah, so to kind of counter sort of what Cord had brought up when he was talking about the red mist again. When I'm mentioning the red mist, it's more of a not necessarily the kill loss that's such a big thing for me. It's the moral factor part of it that goes in. It's that visual cue. Even though it might only kill 2-3 people or however many people it kills, every time it happens, everyone around you, at least in my experience, always goes, "Oh my gosh," and it's just one of those things that it's one of those things that happens in a game that's just like, you don't forget, at least not for a couple days anyway. And to kind of rebut Vastal, he was talking about the ticket loss, even though a lot of the times artillery shoots at, the lines and it most of the deaths are in formation. I would say, even though that is pretty much the case, the the fact that Artie is just so good at aerial denial on specific maps, of course. The fact that it's just so good at that, even though it's only taking out a couple people, it still is worth it, in my opinion. Even on the attacking side on some maps, I will concede. There's always a couple matches, right, where you get like 100 pop events, or and you get 10 people stacked up on artillery. And at that point, I'll concede. Yeah, it's pretty much way overburdened on the artillery side. If you're attacking, I will concede that point as well. You probably want more men on the point than you want in artillery. But the fact remains, in the on the right maps, you have a stubborn CO that wants to stay out in the open, that wants to take a point. He doesn't use cover, and he just gets absolutely decimated by the artillery. Artillery is one of those things. When it's good, it's good, and when it's bad, it's bad. But the same thing can be said about regular infantry play on maps where there are no artillery. Isn't really an option, a viable option. It just comes down to when it's good, it's good, and when it's bad, it's bad. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Now, moving on to round 3, same order. Archer, you may begin.
All right. Sure. So back to I'll take something Vastal mentioned this time first. So you mentioned that artillery is less useful because you need those bodies on point. I definitely agree. In a lot of circumstances, that is true. I would push back a little bit for the melee, because while melee is certainly effective, especially for attackers, I think there's also still a threat of team kills there. And yes, there can be team kills from artillery if things are placed poorly. But that comes down to how good your battery is. So, once again, you need a good battery. But I think having the battery to help either with the charge or before the charge, if you can place it right, is generally better than just having the bodies. Because if you have someone that's just stabbing, you'd be able to stab people. You may be stabbing your friendlies as well. So that can definitely be a detriment. But that's always the risk you run with infantry. And, we've played the game long enough. Team kills happen, sometimes intentionally. Those are fun. But yeah, and Corded, I also, to your point earlier, it is indeed easier to train somebody to shoot and to stab. They're now, granted, shooting can definitely be honed in, and you can have some really top-notch shooters like you guys have in D Company, and I think that we have some very good ones in C Company as well in the 6LA. But I think it's also worthwhile for that guy that's really passionate about artillery, like our friend Ukill. He loves artillery, and he likes to teach other people about it. Like, he loves it so much that he's doing drill with other people to teach them how to use it effectively, even just the basics of it, which some of us weren't familiar with. And I think it's useful to either have that knowledge and be willing to pursue it in hopes of using battery more effectively, or hey, we need some guys on battery. Would someone like to help out? Like, I think it's great to have those guys, to have those as a tool. I'll liken this to another game I play, which is DCS. I don't know if anybody else here plays any flight sims, but I see artillery and infantry as two different planes, right? You have they have very different roles, but they can fight towards the same goal, and they're both difficult to learn in their own right. One may be easier than another, but I think they both have a role to play, and I think artillery has its own merits that make it worth grinding that more time and that more experience that you'll need to learn it.
Thank you. Corded, 3 minutes, you may begin.
I definitely admire the people that take the time to learn artillery. When our artillery was going, me and Jason, we stuck our heads in the cannons and we learned it ourselves and got pretty good with it. And then other people came around and we were able to hand it off. There's definitely a use for artillery. It definitely can be useful, but the way it usually plays out in an event is that artillery is fighting a separate battle by themselves. Um, like, officers are not, like, quote unquote calling in artillery which I think could be a very good thing. You know, it's like, hey, Artie, we're about to push point right now. If you can shoot now, you know, that could really be a good opportunity. But that hardly ever seems to be the case, and that extra level of communication kind of strains um, the ability of the artillery to have a much better effect in the field. Vec, what you were saying about the morale, that's definitely a thing. I agree. When people get killed in your line by something out of nowhere, that's crazy. The problem is people have to be trained to do that. They have to be able to shoot there. They have to be able to kill enough people to make you scared and make you run away. Someone else has said something about like an officer not using cover, being out in the field, and that's kind of relying on someone else's mistakes, at least in that instance, to make artillery effective. Which is there's a place definitely for that. Dragon, I agree. Rifles should not be shooting very far. I think 100 is a good place to stay around. Stay under that as much as possible. After that, it becomes difficult to see and shoot at the same time. What else? Vastal. You're saying with a rifle versus cannon. It just comes down to competency. What Archer was saying before, definitely easier to train someone with a rifle. I do think that Artie on Conquest can be good. Because if you're having people who are trying to take a point, you know, if you have people that are like cannons that are pointed directly at that point, you can stop that from getting capped at least a few times. There's definitely a point for Artie. Artie is bad for Conquest, at least for placements, just by default. And that's just the nature of trying to put too many maps together, in my opinion.
All right, your 3 minutes is up. Thank you, Corded. Now we're moving on to Little Dragon. You have 3 minutes. You may begin.
All right, so to counter Vastal on artillery, you shouldn't use artillery when you're attacking. I would take High Street, and there comes the moral aspect of the effectiveness of artillery being either a morale boost or deterring the morale. There is nowhere to hide for the Union on High Street. You are being attacked constantly in the front, and you're being shot by artillery from behind. And that alone is just enough for me personally to say, when I play High Street, I already think, yeah, okay, let's just go through this, and it's not gonna be fun. You're gonna be either blown up, stabbed in the face, or just shot down by musket fire. So that's not a lot of fun. And we are with that with the morale aspect. Just beginning a map that you already know you're gonna be blown to smithereens by the artillery is I think morale aspect and artillery should always be used. And also, if you're leading a squad, the sometimes your entire line can just be blown up as soon as you want to make a move, and then you have to cancel that move in the steam jet because half your line is gone and you're not going to be any effective at all. So you have to cancel that in the steam jet. They need to anticipate on that somehow. So in form of communication wise and tactical wise, RT can be devastating in every single map you can use artillery effectively.
All right. Thank you, Little Dragon. Next, we're moving on to Vastal. 3 minutes. You may begin.
First of all, I won't deny, High Street artillery, when in the hands of very competent people at artillery, can be very, very devastating because the Union have to hold that stone wall and you can deny them that. However, if you take a look at all the maps in the game, the majority of them, either artillery is, as I said, generally on the average level, which means that they are a net negative in my view, or artillery is of poor quality. You typically don't really need to worry too much about artillery, even as the defender, on almost all of the maps in the game. I can think of High Street. If I looked up the what do you call it? The actual map list, I can't think of anything other than High Street to be worried about artillery for. But besides that, one of the big things we were talking about the level of skill and training for members on artillery. Even if someone is highly skilled at artillery, that's great for them. But we, in this debate, are talking about per man. We're taking this by the average player. Sure, there are outliners. Very bad artillery players, very good artillery players, very bad infantry players, very good infantry players. But we're taking this at the average player in the broad majority of matches. And on average, the average artillerist isn't going to be able to constantly bring shells down on High Street, denying the Union the position. Nor are they going to be able to, let's say on Cox's push, constantly thud into the Union lines. You know? For the majority of maps, artillery is just lukewarm. You know? And we play the majority of maps. And in almost all circumstances, it's a thing that's there. It's enjoyable, I will not deny that. In my time playing artillery, I've had fun on it. But at the same time, I always have that inkling feeling in the back of my neck, knowing that if I was playing infantry with these 3 other guys that I'm on this battery with, we could be down to that point of contention right now. We could be swaying it. I can't recall who it was that directed something at me. Actually, I think I'll end it here because I can't recall what the comment was. That is all.
All right. Thank you. And then last for round 3, Vec, you have 3 minutes. You may begin.
Yeah, so I agree. Arty is an art form. In events, Arty should be manned by trained and enthusiastic, artillerymen. To kind of counter Vastal's point at the end there, even though you have the views of being lukewarm, I still think that there's a lot of players that they simply want to play artillery, and this is a game. And if they are, they don't want to be rank and file, if they put a lot of time and effort, like Mister, like I forget who said that they had a. Excuse me, one second. They said that they had in the 6th Louisiana, they had a really enthusiastic gentleman that just loves Arty and loves to teach it. And maybe they enjoy playing rank and file, maybe they don't enjoy being infantry. But if they want to play Arty and they feel like they can be effective at it on a map, then I think that they should be given the chance. I don't want to see events where the artillery is just stacked with where it's just overburdened. There's too many people. One thing that wasn't brought up until about halfway through was the team killing aspect. The team killing can be absolutely horrendous, but that goes to the point of artillery and events should be organized, should be well trained, and they should be able to do their jobs and do them effectively on the maps that they need to be. I would love to see more coordination with artillery, actually talking to their COs on, hey, we're about to attack this point, start firing, aim a little bit higher. And I do see a little bit of that, but it could definitely be better. So yeah, we shouldn't deny people that want to play Arty the opportunity to play Arty. And I think it is effective, and it can be effective. It's shown that it can be. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Now, moving on to our last round, the closing round. By the way, anyone in the audience, if you still have any questions, please put them in the form in the announcements. Try to make them questions if possible. It'd be appreciated. So, 3-minute closing statements. Archer, you may begin.
Okay. So I kind of want to flip things a little bit on their head here. I actually want to address something that that Little Dragon said. And I know this is more map specific, but I do want to talk about High Street a little bit. I'm actually more of the infantry guy for High Street. I like, well, especially for CSA attacking. I like having more men in that instance. And I do think artillery is much more of just a morale thing for High Street. I've watched the battery positions and watched people try and place the rounds correctly, and there's just something about the hills that just throw things off, and just the distance that they're at. And you're also pulling an officer, right, to even spot the rounds, unless you're just really zooming in your camera or something. So that can be a detriment as well, because the officer, we didn't mention this even, I'll say this is a detriment for artillery. You generally will need someone with binoculars, an officer, to actually spot your rounds going in, because the guy firing the gun can't see it. There's just smoke in his face. And the other person, or other two people that are on the battery with him or on the gun with him, I mean, they may be able to see it, but they can't give them exact corrections like an officer would be able to. So that's definitely a limitation of it. And apart from that, I've generally been speaking about more organized events, since that's just what I have more experience with. When it comes to public matches, and someone mentioned this before, play artillery. Just to anyone out there, play artillery, give it a shot. As long as there's not too many guys on it, because then it's a mess, and it's gonna make you angry, because people will be fighting for shells, and people grab the wrong shell type and run over to you and be like, "Oh, this isn't yours? Okay," and run away. And that can be a bit of a mess. But especially Union players, please on Cook's Countercharge choose battery, because I have fun running you guys over every time, and that's just a blast. And also on Nicodemus Hill, please pick battery so me and you Kill can flip all your cannons, because it's just the best time.
All right. Thank you. Corded, closing statements. 3 minutes, you may begin.
I think anyone that wants to play artillery, whether it's events or public matches, should do it. That's experience you can gain, but as I said before, don't put too many people on it, because you will be putting yourself at a disadvantage. If you want to put that many people on there, that's fine. But, you just got to realize that's not the most effective thing to do. I'm drawing a blank. There's a lot of communication and team play that needs to come between the infantry and the artillery that I don't see hardly ever. I think infantry can do a good job at spotting artillery at certain points. An officer, like Archer said, they could have difficulty, but you just got to walk to the side of the cannon a few yards or in front of it. Generally, people are going to be in TeamSpeak or Discord with each other, and they can talk. They don't have to run back. Spotting is usually fine. That's all I have to say.
All right. Thank you. Little Dragon, closing statements. 3 minutes, you may begin.
In the 17th century, King Louis XIV of France made France a powerhouse, military-wise. And on his order, this was inscripted on all cannons of France. Ultima ratio regum. The final argument of kings. And I think that is because artillery is just, it's awesome. And to go to another person in history that started out as a battery commander. God fights on the side with the best artillery, Napoleon Bonaparte. And I think that's my statement.
Thank you. Now, Vastal, 3 minute closing statement. You may begin.
Whilst I don't believe that God is on the side of the artillerists, I do think that they do have merit in most of their games. And that if you are very good at it, crack at it. And in public games, realistically, you shouldn't care too much. Let people have fun. It's a public match. we shouldn't see people saying, get off artillery, it's not worth the manpower in a public game. That is what I'm against. However, it is good to recognize that too much of something is bad, and too much artillery is something that's really bad. You need the men on the points. Of course, yada. We've been over this. But, in my view, to close my statement off, people should be aware of the effects of artillery and the cost-benefit of artillery in games. In public matches, have fun at it. But in events, people need to come to an understanding that not everyone that wants to play artillery should get to play artillery in events. Simply put, let's say we have a 100v100 game. We got 10 people that want to play artillery. That's too much. People in the artillery communities need to come together and decide, alright, we'll play it this week. You play it that week. Because, really, it's too detrimental for games. Besides that, I forgot again what the remark someone laid before me. Sorry, I'm having an Alzheimer's moment right now. No, it's left my mind. I guess I close my statement now looking like an idiot.
All right. And then the last statement of this debate. Vec, you have 3 minutes for your closing statement. You may begin.
Yeah, so I mean, at the end of the day, we're all here to have fun. I want people to have fun in the events. Obviously, we made the difference between pubs and events. Even during the events, I still want people to come and have fun. If somebody says that I'm an artilleryman, I've practiced for it, I've spent time in the drill camp, it's what I signed up for, it's what I want to do. I would rather see them come to the event as an artilleryman than come to the event and not have the best time that they could have, or not show up at all. I do agree that certain caps should be in place, and rotating different groups. If you have if you have an event with consistent regiments coming every week or every event, then you can rotate. Say, for instance, 6th Louisiana, you guys get it this time, and or the fifth gets it the next time, or however they want to divvy it up. I don't want to see stacked artillery, because it's not good. But I think it I love seeing the artillery. I love seeing good artillery gameplay, even when it's directed at me. Even when I'm on the receiving end of it and I'm getting killed over and over again, it's still just that immersion that I get from this game that it's hard to replicate in any other game. And I'm here to have fun. I'm here to have a great time. I want everybody to have a great time. So if they are an artilleryman, then that's what I want them to do. That's all I have.
All right. I appreciate you all giving your points. We have some questions. All of them, though, are directed towards anti-artillery. So, actually, there's only one question that I'll read. So, the question is to the anti-artillery people, or rather the people that think artillery is not worth the manpower, why do you think that men on Arty can't cap? CSA artillery can cap on Nicodemus Hill when needed. And any of you can answer that.
I mean, they can. They're running across an open field. And at that point, if I'm Nicodemus Hill, you're charging a stone wall. You're charging across an open field. You're already getting shot at. Enemies already looking at you. On most of the maps, artillery is really far back. And if you need them, they're not going to get there in time to make much of a difference. Unless maybe they can hold off the cap for a little bit longer, just those few seconds. But that's just such a rare case, in my opinion. I just don't think it's worth addressing switching artillery to infantry by just whipping out the short sword or whatever.
Yeah, I'd agree with Corden. Whenever you have a moment, let's say Nicodemus Hill, where, Union are on the point, we need to cap it. You're going to have 10 guys with swords try to, run across the open field, get to a stone wall, and stab them. 10 guys with rifles can deliver their shots directly off, use their bayonets that have a longer reach, and generally, can keep spawning on a flag bearer rather than back at the artillery battery. And the fact that artillerists can run to the point of contention on some maps, wouldn't you prefer them to just be there at the start? So if they have to get off the point, or off the cannons to run down, then they're not using their cannons. It's just a guy with a sword running across the field. Then you've lost your artillery, and you have guys that are inferior to infantry on the point. I don't see the benefit of that.
And remember, you're also having to convince someone to get off something that they've been on the whole round. Artillerymen, as an arty guy, a little bit. I don't want to leave my gun. I want to keep firing the big gun as much as I can. And I think it might actually be a little bit better to shoot whatever shot you have on that point, because you're not likely to kill more than one person as an artillery guy charging in. Getting 2 or 3, that's just going to be a little bit better. And if you're shooting on point, you probably have a good idea where to shoot.
All right, we just got a response to your guys' thing. So, do you think that Yankees rushing to the point are going to stop and shoot CSA Arty coming down the point?
Say that again?
Do you think that Yankees rushing to the point on Nicodemus Hill are going to stop and shoot CSA artillery coming down to the point?
They might not be able to shoot, you know? If you're running down there as an artillery, they're probably already there or close to being there. Like your guys on CSA, they're already close to being run off of it. So they're probably getting loads. Some of them are. There's also officers there that run from spawn, but they're spawning in on the flag. They've got 6-shot seats. There's maybe 10, 15, 20 artillerymen coming down. And you're also up against bayoneted rifles. You're gonna have to hop over that stone wall as well, or the fence on the left side. You're at a disadvantage. Just charging in general, you're at a disadvantage to the people that are behind cover. That's just a fact. And 4 people per battery, in general, can have short swords. After that, you have sticks. 5 hits per to kill somebody. That's just about nothing. That's a suicide note.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add myself on that. It's, oh yeah, so they're not going to prioritize the guys with the swords. Oh no. The guys with the swords are going to die. After the Union, we're going to assume that the guys on the artillery have fired their shots at the moment of convergence on the point, where they get the best shots on the Union artillery. On the Union infantry. They fire, then they start running. By the time they get onto the point, the battle's probably already been decided. Union are on there. They're either on there, or their friendly infantry managed to repel them. Those guys with their swords running over aren't going to make the difference.
I'll chip in a little bit here.
Go right ahead.
In defense of the artillerymen charging the point, there is nothing or very few things funnier than watching a bunch of artillerymen yell "Q, Q, Q" as they're beating someone to death with their giant Q-tips. There are very few things funnier than that in this game. So, on that note only, I think it's worth it.
Well, I will admit, I would prefer the artillerymen. I would prefer the artillerymen actually running to the point than sitting there firing the cannons. But that's only because I would have rather them be there in the first place. They could. I've seen it one time happen where artillerists managed to reinforce the defenders, but it was a very, very close melee fight that the Union realistically wouldn't have been able to stop the infantry spawning at main coming back. So, sure, the artillerists managed to aid in stopping a Union push once that I witnessed, but that was mainly because it was already a lost push, but it would just taken an extra 30 seconds.
All right, cool. I appreciate everyone in the audience listening for asking those questions. I appreciate all our panelists here for having a conversation. It was very fun to listen to and made me think about a lot of things I haven't thought of before. So, yeah, with that being said, We'll see you guys in the next episode. Have a good night.